Welcome to Wine and Wingspan, a weekly podcast where your new book besties, Jess and Jo, review their favorite and least favorite reads over a bottle of the good stuff.
We're here to have a good time and certainly don't want to ruin yours, so please check the title and trigger warnings so nothing is spoiled.
You may find that your opinion differs from ours, and we want to hear about it. So follow us on social media and let your voice be heard in our comments. Without further ado, cheers!
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Wine and Wingspan. We are your hosts, Jess and Jo, and we're back, baby, for season 2. And every single week, we get on here and we drink wine and other things, various things, and talk about our favorite wingspans. Unfortunately, in this episode, there's not going to be a whole lot of wingspan. It's going to be a whole lot of beast span. Whatever that is. Whatever Tamlin has, that's what we're talking about today. I don't know. This feels like bestiality, to be quite honest, to be fair.
I mean, is it? Is it?
It might be. But we are very excited that we recently asked you guys on our social media, which if you're not following us, you need to follow us. We asked you what you guys wanted to see in upcoming seasons, and the number one most requested thing was an ACOTAR deep dive. So Jess and I have done our homework, our due diligence. Jess has reread it. I have reread ACOTAR 5 times, so I don't really need to reread this book again. But I did skim through a lot of parts and reviewed a lot of notes that I had. And we are ready to deep dive into this thing. I think there's going to be quite a bit of Massiverse spoiler connections. So if you haven't read the whole Massiverse, we are rereading this book in, the perspective of having read all of these books. So make sure that you check all the spoiler warnings for this episode in the description before you listen. But yeah,
entire ACOTAR series spoilers. We will refer to the other books. So if you have not read any of the other books, stop. Go read
Don't be
them.
mad.
Because otherwise, it will ruin it for you. That is one thing I will say. ACOTAR was never spoiled for me. Crescent City was never spoiled for me. And I think that's why I enjoy them so much. So do not... do not keep listening unless you want to know what's in all the ACOTARs.
Yes,
books.
100%.
The maths, the wars, the sifs.
All of it. The FASs. The maths. Before we get into it, we have a couple exciting things to talk about. First of all, your girl was on the Whimsy Gossip podcast as a guest this last week. So if you haven't gone and listened to that episode, definitely do. We talked about all things Massiverse theories and Crescent City 3. That was really exciting. Thank you so much to the Whimsy Gossip girls for having me on and representing Wine and Wingspan over in their universe. Like I mentioned in the beginning of the episode, we are covering all of ACOTAR, but we've got some other series that we're going to be covering towards the end of the season. Most notably, Once Upon a Broken Heart, which was very requested as well. So we'll be talking about that series later on here towards the end of next month. But for now, we're diving in. We're going deep into the ACOTAR universe. And there's been a lot of people coming over into ACOTAR, which has been really cool for those of us who have been here for a while to see all the new faces. And people that are completely innocently coming into this, not realizing the depths that they're about to dive into. And it's been kind of nostalgic for me to think back on when I first read this book and how I had no idea what I was getting myself into when I read it, and how much I hated this book, actually. I really, really, really disliked the first book so much and didn't read the rest of the ACOTAR series for a long time, like 6 months. I didn't read ACOMAF for like 6 months after finishing ACOTAR because I hated it. I was like, this book sucks. And so If you love it, no judgment. I loved it more upon the reread. Every time I reread it, I love it more. But my first read of this book, I hated it. I was like, what in the Massiverse is this? What the mass? Also, before we start, I should probably apologize in advance. I got a sinus infection from dunking my head into the cauldron. It's a long story, but if you follow me on Instagram or TikTok, then you know I've been posting some Nesta Cauldron content. And when I dunked my head into that water, it was disgusting water with stuff in it, and immediately almost drowned and got a sinus infection. So I apologize in advance for my voice. It is getting better, I promise. But without further ado, Jess, how was your trip overseas?
Oh, yes. Okay, so Rome is Crescent City. All I did the entire time I was there was like, because we talked about this when we did a Crescent City deep dive. I was like, man, it gives me New Orleans vibes. And you're like, oh, New York City, that's where she lives. And I was like, yeah, that makes sense. Flew into Rome, started walking around. I was like, oh, shit, nah, this is Rome. Because it's talking about like thousands of years worth of stuff and how things are like laid out throughout the city. I was like, oh, shit, the river, like, it's Rome. It's 100%. Wow. It was really cool. So I felt like I was Bryce running around every 5 minutes, and that was really cool. Because they had like the military there that was like also part of their police force. Their structure's a lot different than America's. So I was like, oh my god, it's the whatever battalion from Crescent City. Yeah. But it was extraordinary. It was probably, I mean, yeah, it was like the most coolest trip I've ever done in my life. But the food was amazing. The people were really cool. The culture was great. I went to translate Latin while I was there, so that was all fun. And we got to do all the nerdy stuff, the Colosseum, and we got to go into catacombs and archaeological sites, whatever. But one thing I will say just about the people that I thought was really cool, when you're on the train or the subway, you will get a ticket and could get arrested as if there's a pregnant woman or elderly person standing and you're young and you're sitting. So it's just like, yeah, things like that I thought was really neat of how they took care of their own. That we don't do in America that I think we should implement in America. That was like the one thing that really stood out. Cool. But it was super fun. I ate gelato like at every meal. I lost weight while I was there. I was like, what the hell? What the hell? So I would really love to go again next year. Hopefully.
Well, I'm going with you.
I found tickets for like $400 or $500 before round trip. So I'm just saying, but yeah, there's a couple trips we need to line up, maybe Paris as well.
Oh my gosh.
Well, I think we could do it for pretty cheap.
We've got a lot of things coming down the pipeline, both myself and then also with Jess with Wine and Wingspan. So we will be doing some traveling in the next couple of years, and we're super stoked about it. And there's more. There's so much more that I want to talk about, but
they're not ready.
They're not ready, and I also can't talk about in a recording. But
I signed an NDA.
Yeah, literally. I'm glad you're back, but I'm sad you're back because it looked magical, and I wish I was there with you. I wish you could have put me in your suitcase and taken me with you. But that just means we have to go book talk girls trip.
Honestly, I would love to host
I want to go to Rome. I want to go to that city at the Matterhorn that looks like Valaris in like Switzerland or something like that.
Yeah. It's like Zurich or
Zermatt
I think
or something like that.
Totally made up Zurich. I don't know where I got that from.
I think it's Zermatt or something like that. But I want to go so bad. So I'm just saying, any girlies want to go on a girls trip to Europe, hit me up in the DMs. I do need to update my passport, but I am willing to do whatever it takes to make it to Europe because America sucks. So. All right. Well, I'm glad that you were able to squeeze the Akatari read in between.
Yeah. Oh, I didn't even read it. Let's be honest. I read it the first time, but I did the dramatized audio, and it was the funniest read. I think is why I enjoyed it so much, because it was hysterical. And Tamlin's like, I'm so...
Yeah,
It
Jess was sending me her live
chaotic.
thoughts as she's listening to the graphic audio, and she's like, this is embarrassing.
I was so embarrassed the whole time. But it was fantastic. I was like,
also
how
really
did I
funny.
fall for him?
So you were you were listening to the graphic audio at the same time my mother was listening to the graphic audio. No. So I'm getting two perspectives of my mom, who is 50 years old and has never read these books or any kind of fairy smut ever. And she's listening to it, and she's a very, like, pearl-clutching person. I did not know how she was going to react. And she's like, Tamlin is so cute. And I'm like, oh, man, you are a walking red flag. But it was making me laugh because she's like, his voice is so hot. And then Jess is texting me at the same time, Tamlin is so ick. And I'm like, oh my God. Like, these two perspectives could not be more different. My mother and Jess. So I thought that was
He's
really
like,
funny.
your hair is clean. I'm like, ew, boo, you whore. No one
Yeah.
likes you, Tamlin. Shut
Every
up.
5 minutes, Jess is like, this sucks. But I'm glad you were able to at least fit it in somehow so that we can talk about it today. And talk about human Feyre. We're back to human Feyre,
Yeah.
which is weird to think about. It's weird to imagine her without her water wolf shifty powers. But the story begins with our girl Feyre out having her Katniss Everdeen moment in the woods. And she's girl's desperate, and right out the gate, one thing I love about Feyre from the beginning, she's like, I'm starving. My whole family's gonna die. I've got to get out there. Also, side note, I have been fucking this guy named Isaac. She just throws
She's
that
like,
in
oh
there.
yeah, and I taught him how to hunt, and we bang, boom.
From the beginning, Miss Sarah J Maas, from the get-go, she's like, Feyre's different. She has hella ass, and she is slinging puss left, right, and center. From the get-go. She does not wait. This is not like I'm so virginal. Feyre gets 2 seconds into this story and is like, and also, by the way, I banged this dude. Anyway, back to hunting. That's Feyre's vibe.
Oh, that's so funny.
She like sees this deer, and she's like, this deer could feed her family for like a week. Jess and I are from the sticks. I think a deer could feed your family of 4 adults for a little bit longer than a week.
Yeah.
A little bit
I will
longer.
say, I do hunt and fish. I've done those things, and yeah, it'd be fine. Especially like 3 females and an old man.
Yeah,
It's not
you'd be
like
fine.
you're feeding hardy teenage boys.
I was like, a week? How much deer are you eating? It's a big deer. If we all eat 4 roasts a day, it'll feed us for a week. So,
And she's probably using like every part of the deer too, especially if they're
Yeah.
starving. It's not like she's just using the backstrap like the good shit. Like she's using
No.
everything. She's probably using organs and all sorts of stuff.
yeah,
It
every
shows you
time I
Sarah
reread
lives in
this-
New York.
Yeah, every time I reread this book, I'm like, Sarah is from Manhattan.
Yeah.
I don't think this girl has ever gone camping.
She's
So-
like calculating. She's Googling, how much pounds of meat do you get from a deer?
Yeah. And has her little...
Babe, how long would it take for you to eat 40 pounds of meat? Like asking her husband. He's like, I don't know, a week. And she's like, perfect. Puts it in the book.
Yeah. So she sees this wolf, and it's the size of a pony. A pony.
Okay.
And-
I've had
which,
a
I
pony.
mean-
Ponies are not very big. And well, I guess,
Again,
yeah,
I
she
don't
lives
know
in
that
Manhattan.
Sarah has ever left Manhattan. The size of a pony is... I've seen wolves bigger than ponies, to be completely fair.
Thinking.
So she's like, man, that wolf might be a fairy. And then she's like, they hate iron. So I've got my iron, arrows, but also I've got my ashwood arrows.
Yeah.
Or one ashwood arrow. So don't worry. So she, waits, the wolf, kills the deer, and then she kills the wolf. So, I did... This is, the whole... It feels... This whole chapter just feels so Hunger Games to me.
Yeah.
But she's this wolf might be a fairy. So she kills it, and then she skins it and carries the pelt home and the deer home. Can we talk about the fact that how, fucked up that is? That she's that might be a fairy? I'm gonna skin it. And take
I like
it
how this
home.
is, fucking page 4, too. Where she's like,
Yeah. So when I first read this book, it did not even register for me that the wolf was Fae. And even though Feyre says it, but then I'm like, oh my god. She acknowledged that she's that might be a dude. I'm gonna skin the dude. That's how desperate Feyre is, which is sad. But also is definitely 19-year-old behavior. So, that is crazy to do. To skin a man?
Yeah, he just didn't give a shit. I like how she didn't even but she didn't even talk about really skinning it. She was just okay,
she was
then
then I skinned it.
No, he did. Yeah, I skinned him and cleaned him with my arrows the best I could. Damn, in the snow. I will say this, okay, about skinning it. We gotta talk about the seriousness, how Sarah's from Manhattan. Full blow skinning an animal that size. You have to be really good at it.
I'm imagining when she says it's the size of a pony, I'm imagining that she thinks a pony is the size of a horse. So I'm thinking this is a giant wolf. It takes down this deer in one fell swoop. So this is a big thing. And all she's got are arrowheads. And she skins a whole... I mean, it's no wonder... how did she not pass out in the middle of the freezing cold? And she carried the deer home.
It wrapped the bloody side of his pelt around the doe's death wound before I holstered her across my shoulders. But she would have wanted to field dress the deer, because otherwise it would have started stiffening and it would have poisoned the meat before she got it back. It would have started bloating and then it would stiffen depending on how long.
So she kills a giant wolf with one shot.
I grasped the legs of the deer, spared a final glance at the steaming carcass of the wolf. His remaining golden eye now stared at the snow-heavy sky for a moment. I wish I had it in me to feel remorse for the dead thing, but this was the forest, and it was winter. You killed a dude.
You killed a dude. You skinned him. I'm assuming you field dressed the deer, and then you carried it home. It's from the beginning of when... Feyre's that deer could feed my family for 1 week. I'm Sarah has never stepped outside of an apartment building. If you're gonna write a hunting scene, I would generally suggest talk to a hunter. Speak to one. Go on Reddit and look up, watch a hunting video on YouTube. There is no way that an emaciated 19-year-old, to the point of emaciated that she is, where Rhysand and Akamath makes comments about how she's finally putting on weight and stuff. There is no way I could carry. I could not carry a deer home by myself, all the way through the forest, through snow.
It's just awkward. It's not that they're super heavy. It's really just awkward to carry. That's the thing. I'm just impressed with her shot.
I just feel if you're that emaciated, you are probably not. But yeah, so we find out she's basically fucking Hawkeye. Kills his wolf. Good for her. So in the first chapter of this book, we find out Feyre slings ass. Okay? She's got hella ass. And Isaac Hale has been hitting it from the back. We find out that Feyre has no concept of how meat works. She also has clearly never seen a pony before in her life because she doesn't understand that size. She has an Ashwood arrow on her. So she keeps that thing locked and loaded. And then she apparently has Hawkeye's powers and has fucking superhuman strength. Even though she is half starved to death. And is able to both skin a man in wolf form with nothing but a arrowhead probably the size of my thumb and take a friggin' deer home. Slick with blood. I imagine she's covered in blood at this point. I mean, it's crazy.
She's so chaotic and I love it.
So that's chapter 1. That's the first chapter.
I remember reading this the first time being like, okay, all right, desperation, all right, okay, I get this. And then all of a sudden it's like, chapter 2, Tamlin shows up. It was really fast. But before we, I don't know, she tries to like mother her sisters throughout all this bullshit or whatever. But
yeah,
we have to talk about, before we get to Tamlin showing up, the mercenary. Who is she? I have questions. I think she was put in there so Sarah could use her later. And then Sarah's like, I don't need her for whatever storyline she was going to. I think she was just like a clever person.
I have theories about who she is. So on our way to meeting the mercenary, we meet Elaine and Nesta. And I don't think that this triangulation of women is like, I don't think it's accidental. So so we meet Elaine and Nesta. They're like 19, 21, and 22. So Elaine is like super sweet, but she's like really quiet. And then Nesta is like very cruel and very cold. And Feyre is like, I don't want to give them shit because all they do is spend my money and eat all my food and blah, blah, blah. And then she talks about her mom and how her dad is basically a deadbeat. And Feyre is like, and my mom, like, didn't love us and only loved my dad, which is a weird thing to say, I feel like, personally. To be like, my mom didn't love my kids and only loved my dad. That's weird. And then,
that is weird.
And on her deathbed, she made Feyre, the youngest, promise to look after her family.
I don't understand.
She's like
that.
only 8. That is so weird. And she doesn't understand why. Like, she's like, why did my mom make me promise that and not my dad? So this is where the theories begin for me. Because this is right before we meet the mercenary. Feyre is set up by her mother, who has no love in her heart for these children, to promise to look after their father. Their father, as we know by the end of Vaca War, clearly loves his daughters, but is basically useless. My theory is their mother is not their mother. I don't know if they are changelings, which, if you know anything about other Fae literature, changelings are Fae children that are switched with human children, and then raised by humans, which is one of my thoughts, is that the Artron sisters are changelings. The only child I think maybe...
So they would already be half Fae?
Or fully Fae.
Or fully Fae.
But some kind of...
But they're turned into high Fae. Mm-hmm. Because there's a difference between Fae and high Fae.
Yeah. So maybe they're like a lower Fae, or... I mean, we have, like, the Dracon and, I forget her name every time.
Oh, the twins?
Yeah, where they're, no. Dracon is the, guy in the middle of the desert, the angel seraphim guy.
Oh.
Miriam, who was made. Who was a human half Fae slave, and then was made into full Fae. which like they talk about that in Akawar when Feyre is learning to fly and Azriel gives her like a whole thing.
Oh,
so,
that's right. That's right. Okay.
So my thought could be that their parentage at this point to me is dubious, because I feel like Feyre being like, my mom never loved me, she only loved my dad. I'm like, that's weird. To me, that's strange. And Nesta later being like, yeah, she just like only cared about us where we were going next, basically. Like, she only really cares about who Nesta's gonna marry. And she always told Nesta.
She always knew that her time was limited then.
Yeah, I mean, my other theory is that that is her mother, but that she made some kind of Fae deal.
Mm-hmm. Give me daughters. Okay, well, I'll give me part of your life or something.
Yeah, or give me children. All I want is children. And then it's like, well, you could have children, but only through me. I don't, either their mother's not their mother or their father's not their father. But Elaine is described as looking like their father, and the other two aren't. Feyre and Nesta look nothing like their dad. But Elaine has their father's eyes. That's why her eyes are brown.
And to back that up, I mean, he says, this is one thing that I marked in the book that I was like, when she gets to there, she's talking to Lucien and Tamlin, and they're talking about humans and stuff. And they're kind of like making jokes, and Lucian's like, we also dance with spirits underneath the full moon and snatch babies from their cradles and replace them with changelings. Mm-hmm. And then Tamlin interrupts him and said, didn't your mother tell you anything about us? So why would it be the mother's job to talk about it? Like, and isn't that a weird
point for Tamlin to cut in? We change out we do changelings, and then Tamlin's like, didn't your mother tell you about us?
And then she's like, my mother didn't have time to tell me stories. And he said, because she died. And he's like, hang on, what the fuck? He has no idea she's dead. And he's like, how did she die? I didn't see older signs of an older woman in your house. And she's like, typhus when I was 8. And then Tamlin feels very emotional about it. And so does Lucien. They're both kind of like, oh shit. And this is the first time they're kind of feel bad for her. And they're like, I'm sorry for your loss or whatever. And they're having condolences and stuff. And it's like the first and only time that Lucian's kind of nice to her until he really becomes friends with her. But
it's also very uncharacteristically weird for them to care about a human. Whereas if their mother was Fae, then that might explain things.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And Tamlin taking the interest in her mom is really weird. But so Sarah introduces Elaine and Nesta, and then immediately they go off into the village so Feyre can sell the wolf hide, and that's when we meet the mercenary.
Oh yeah, back to the mercenary.
And so this mercenary, to me, it's giving witch. Mm-hmm. And Feyre, she said, she overpays for them, and she tells Feyre someone once did the same for her, and she believes now it's time to repay that, which had me thinking, like, who here in like the Massiverse got overpaid for a pelt of some kind? And I could not think of one. I was trying to think of the Throne of Glass world, because that would have been all that was written at this point.
Yeah.
She overpaid for the pelt, and then she paid it forward. The only person I can think of, someone who was overpaid and then needs to pay it forward, would be like Irene, but she's not really a mercenary. And then I was maybe thinking of like Manon, because her 13 pay an ultimate price for her, which I think could be really interesting. Aelin as well. For Aelin and Manon, they're both given spider silk at some point.
Aelin does so many little things for random people, though. I don't know.
Yeah. It just makes me think, like, this mercenary just reminds me a lot of one of them, like a witch or something like that. I do think the mercenary, I just believe that we are going to see her by the end of the series again. I think that she's significant. It's weird. It's such a weird interaction.
Yeah.
That she,
I don't feel like... I feel like she could have gone anywhere to get money. But why have such a long interaction? Why make the mercenary female? Why introduce her at all if to not introduce any other mercenaries later? Like, what was
and
the
she
point of
clearly
that?
knows that it's not a normal wolf because she's like, don't hunt so close to the wall.
Yeah, she knows
She
what
knows
it is.
it's not. And that's weird. It feels like she sought Feyre out. And then in the context of just having met Nesta Anna Lane, when by the end of the series we know that they are different even than normal Fae. Like,
Yeah.
Nesta is death. She is death embodied. That is weird. So then it's really weird too after this that this is the time when Sarah chooses to speak on the history of the Fae and humans and how the Fae had once been like the rulers of the world and the humans were slaves, and then the humans rebelled against them, and there were 6 mortal queens, which it's interesting to me that it's mortal and not human. And I never thought about that until thinking like from my notes for this is they're the 6 mortal queens, not the 6 human queens. And mortality versus immortality in these books is very strange because like being immortal doesn't mean you live forever. So you just live a really, 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 really long time. So, so north, the Fae get the north, the humans get the south, and now it seems like the human lands are being invaded and there's nothing really that can be done about it. Then again, we talk about Isaac and how Feyre is banging this dude. And she's like, and by the way, again, just to reiterate, I have been fucking this guy. In case I wasn't clear enough, I do bang. So yeah, that's kind of the world setting for the human world. And other than briefly coming back to the human world in the middle of the story, that is literally most of the human world that we know of. Is Feyre's village. And so far in the series, we haven't seen the continent, and we haven't really seen much else. All we know is Children of the Blessed. Apparently mercenaries are just like a normal thing because nobody seems really shocked by this. And then doesn't seem to be a lot of taboo. It seems like it's a pretty like free world. It's not like a lot of stories where it's like being very pious and all this stuff. Like there's not really a religious system besides the Children of the Blessed, that kind of thing. And so yeah, she's like, but I don't have feelings for this guy, and Feyre's life is really sad. So that's pretty much
It sucks to
the
be
summary
her.
of part 1.
So then Tam shows up. I can't. When I first read it, I was like, and he like bursts in the door and he's like, murderer, who killed in the forest, blah, blah, blah. I was like, what the fuck am I reading?
Yeah.
What am
crazy.
This was the first book that got me back into reading, and I hadn't read since like the Marked series came out.
Yeah.
So what was that, like fucking 2008?
Yeah.
When did that series come out? About to show my age.
Like about that time, 2010. Something like, actually probably like 2007. Now that I'm thinking about it.
Apparently there's a lot of series called Marked.
House of Night is the overall series.
The first book's called Marked, right? 2007.
Yeah.
So,
man, that predates the Obama administration. That's how old we are.
I could vote for Obama whenever I was voting age when Obama came into office. That's funny. So I hadn't read anything, in such a long time. And then I was like, oh my God, book talk kept coming at me. And I kept seeing it, and I was like, fuck it, I'm doing it. Okay, that's fine. If so many people like this book, it has to be good. And then I started reading this, and I was like, and I liked fantasy. I grew up with the Harry Potter stuff, you know. But I was like, the fuck is going on? Yeah, am I too old to read this? Is this going to be a thing? And then I was like, oh, okay, it gets good. But there is that moment where we had to tell everybody, just keep reading.
Yeah. You know what's funny about these books, too, I realized, is SJM really loves just getting 3 chapters into a book and then dropping the biggest bomb ever. Like, Danica dies, chapter 3 of CC1. And Tamlin shows up chapter 4 of ACOTAR. Oh my god. Like, you really have no time to adjust.
There was one word that echoed through me. Fairy. Yeah. So all those words that they had paid for didn't fucking work.
No. It's actually so funny. But you know what's actually interesting about the words? Okay. Word marks.
That's what I was thinking, is that all of that stuff is word marks. They're all the same.
Motherfucking word marks. And it makes so much sense when you think about it's like this traveling guy that just happens to know these word marks. And it's like, this just is giving somebody got shut on the wrong side of a portal. Knowing what we know now. Knowing what we know now. Knowing that Shifter Faye at some point had potentially the ability to cross over into Prithian from their origin world in Aurelia. It would be interesting if some word marks, which, I mean, we see, like, the Book of Breathings is literally word marks, and we know that now because it's the language on the gates and the language on Bryce's back and the language in the book, and that's the language that Amaran's like, how'd you know that language? And to me, this seems like the same thing. And is that really a freaking coincidence? That my mom didn't love me, she only loved my dad, she made me take care of my family, and then she died mysteriously, and Lucian mentions changelings, and then Tamlin's like, well, didn't your mom tell you about us? And she just happens to have a doorway. It's specifically the doorway that has the markings over it. Isn't that interesting? And she happens to live on a cabin right on the edge of the city, right near the wall. And of all the places to take your 3 young, vulnerable daughters, like, it's just weird to me. It's way too many coincidences. But
and she thinks that they can't lie, that fairies can't lie as well at that point, because she says what I thought was really this is kind of funny about Pharaoh, though, is he was like yelling at her, and he's like a large wolf with a gray coat, and she's like, would he know if I lied? Because fairies couldn't lie. Would he know if I'm lying? And then she goes, if it was mistakenly killed. And I'm like, bitch, he knows you killed it. You're not going to get your way out of this. What payment could we offer?
Hypothetically.
If I was there at the time.
And I'm not saying I was.
My hand slipped and shot him in the eye. This is all hypothetical, remember? This is all, we're just pretending. What would happen?
What?
So he demands the treaty of her, which oh, so he's like, oh, you have to come with us. Were you provoked? Blah blah, whatever. So she's like, okay, I guess I'll go with you. And then, like, her dad's like, don't fucking come back. Like, don't.
Yeah. Again.
Don't fucking come back.
Weird. Am I right? If he's been teaching his daughters, the Fae are evil, they're gonna eat ya. First of all, how does he know? How does Feyre's dad know that she will be able to get back? If she is about to pass through a ward that only the Fae can control.
Yeah.
And he's like, don't come back.
He's like, you're always too good for here.
Okay, here's the other thing. You were always too good for here, which implies that he has been to the Fae realm, in my opinion. Like, that he knows that there's something better that she's destined for. Go off and make a name for yourself.
But how does he know?
I have never ever. This is one of the first times when in a book like this where like the hero origin story isn't some dad being like, "You're worth something. Go do a good thing." Usually it's like, "You're worthless and nobody loves you and get out of here."
Yeah.
So it's super weird to me that her dad's like, "Don't ever come back. Go to the fairy realm. It's gonna be great. Peace out. Forget about us." Like, that's so weird. Unless he knows.
Which would make sense if his wife was Fae or something.
Or at least made a deal with the Fae.
If his wife was not from this world. Yeah.
And I think that Tamlin knows who her mom is, but she never asks. She never directly asks
So he doesn't tell her.
He doesn't tell her.
But why? Shit, he's not going to. He's trying to get her to fall in love with him.
No, but I think that the person who actually wants to find out isn't Feyre. It's Nesta or Elaine. They loved their mother. As fucked up as their relationship
Feyre
was.
didn't really care.
No.
And maybe that if Tamlin found it fucked up that like, oh hey, your mom put you up to all this shit, like you had to take care of your entire family, then he's like, you don't need to know about her. You don't need to know.
Tamlin just
it might make
is
it
just
worse.
So emotionally unintelligent that I can't imagine that he'd be like, "Oh, by the way, I know your mom," without being prompted. Like, he's so stupid. I think he would keep that info to himself. And also, if her mom is important, he literally spends all of Akamath trying to prevent her from doing anything. So if her mom turns out to be some powerful Fae or have a deal with a different Fae, how can he control her? Like, how can he ever keep her back if, say, her mom had a deal with the Winter Court or something like that? Like, how could he control her? Like, she would want to go and figure this shit out. And so, I don't think that...
It's not in his best interest to tell her.
Yeah.
I agree.
I think that their mom could be Starborn or something like that.
Opens a lot of doors to not have to close them. Like, I think she did that with Throne of Glass. There was a lot of still other things that could have been talked about or wrapped up, but she leaves those things open just in case she needs to come back to them later. Like, if she realizes one of her storylines isn't working, then she can backtrack to wherever she wants to go.
Yeah. I think that the end of Crescent City 3 is, like, the perfect example of what's gonna happen there, because you think at the end of Silver Flames that Nesta's story is over, but it's clearly not. So until the Archeron sister story is completed, I don't think that we can rule out that we're going to find out who Mama Archeron is, because Papa Archeron, at the end of Silver Flames, when she finally goes to see his grave and like puts that to rest, that's her closure with her dad, but she doesn't have that with her mom yet. So I'm wondering if she'll go on a journey of finding out who her mom is and then have some closure there, you know?
Yeah, that'd be cool. So, basically, he takes her to the castle. And Operation Make Feyre Fall in Love with Tamlin begins. But I think we can both agree that she shouldn't have fallen in love with Tamlin. It should have been Lucien.
For real. How she managed to fall in love with Beast Boy when we've got Lucien, sexy, fox-like.
He was laying down thick the entire time. Yeah.
The riz that Lucien managed to have while being the most pissed off side character of all time is unlike anything I have ever seen. He is so hot, and there's something about him. It's that Autumn Court fire. I'm like, I'm curious. I want to know what's going on with Lucien. And yeah.
I'm pissed off that he has so much fucking game in this book, and he's like helping Tamlin, and Tamlin's just fucking up left and right. Tamlin's like, oh, your hair looks clean. And Lucian's like, bro, what the fuck? Lay it on thick. Let me help you. But then he goes to fucking Elaine, and he's like,
Yeah.
what are you doing? You were so hot.
Got
What
nervous.
happened? What happened? He apparently
He's lost his riz.
He lost it all. He lost his riz. So he takes her there, and he's like, you need to eat. She's wearing pants the entire time, stealing forks, trying to stab people.
Yeah.
And, you know, book one, I was bamboozled. I'm not going to lie. I want to say that I wasn't bamboozled, but I was bamboozled. And I was like, oh my God. Oh, Tamlin. And then when they would talk about the blight, I'm like, who fucking cares? There's a man falling in love with me. It's fine. And then book two, I was like,
Yikes.
I hate this. Yeah, I'm in bed. Like, I just realized how toxic I was in this reread, and that I will love anybody who loves me. This is depressing. So, this is my favorite, though. So, he's trying to get to know her in the worst way possible. Like my little sticky notes that I made on everything. And we talked about this before we started recording, but she's trying to figure things out. She's trying to understand the treaty. She's trying to know, like, does iron work? Does this? Blah, blah, blah. And they're trying to get to know her, too. But they have, a pretty big agenda to make Feyre fall in love with him. And Tamlin and Lucien are, like, talking to her about, unless you have someone back at home, unless there's a line of suitors out the door of your hovel, that makes us seem like worms in comparison. And she's like, I was close with the man back in my village. And immediately Tamlin and Lucien are like, what? What the fuck? What do you mean?
Pardon?
And she's like, and Tamlin goes, are you in love with this man? And the dramatized version of this makes it 20 times better. And she's like, no, I'm not. I don't really, what? And he's like making this big deal, and he's like, what? Do you love anyone else? And she's like, no. I don't, what? And then she's like, asks him, she's like, is this really what you care to know about me? And to myself, I'm like, yes, Feyre, that's all they give a shit about. They need to know if they need to execute a guy in the human realm to get you. That's what they want to know.
They need to know if they need to let you go and find some other bitch. Is what needs to happen. Yeah. They're like, we swing and we miss.
He's like, oh no, we just wanted to find out more about you. Tamlin, you fucking liar.
It makes me wonder how many times they did this before it finally worked.
Yeah, well, the kid of the whatever, they couldn't take them because it had to be somebody that hated Faye.
Right.
I can't.
Yeah.
He's so great. Lucien is just so funny the entire time.
She's like, you literally took me from my family, and like I'm their sole provider. And Tamlin's like, do you really think, his quote's like, do you really think so little of Faye? You think I'd leave them without being provided for when I took their, like, he knows that Feyre was the sole provider for her family already, which also makes you wonder. I just imagine Tamlin having like a little like folio of like every eligible bachelorette in the village. He's like going through, and he's like, Andress, go find me this bitch. And then he's like learning, like, has like a little cue card. He's like, oh yeah, okay, so sole provider for her family, can single-handedly skin a wolf with an arrowhead. Can't read. We're gonna forget that one. Like that's what I imagine, because he's like, I need to get to know you, but I'm not going to ask you really like any question about yourself because I already know.
Oh my God, that's so funny.
Yet I somehow don't know that your mom died.
He's just constantly like, okay, I'll see you at dinner. Okay, and I know this is like Beauty and the Beast retelling and stuff, but I'm like, why were we falling for this? This was not great. This was not. Oh, another great line of Lucien was, were you admiring my sword or just contemplating killing me, Feyre? What about you, Lucien?
Oh yeah,
Tamlin
steals the...
Feyre likes to hunt. Yep.
Feyre really likes to get out in the country. And she steals a knife.
I'm gonna pee my pants. So good.
It's the sinus infection talking. All you have to do is be infected. So she's like, yeah, also my mom died. Then she like steals the knife. And then Lucien, okay, so Feyre's like, hey, I want to get out of here. I know you don't want me to be here. So maybe you could get me out of here. And he's like, well, there's not really a good way to get out of the treaty, other than like dying. And then he's like, anyway, Feyre, you want to come on a dangerous patrol with me? Which it sounds
That's
like...
why I like him so much.
In hindsight, I'm like, Lucien, you tried to kill Feyre. Because you're like, I don't want you here. So maybe I'll just take you out where the bog can get you. And then I'll let that thing take care of my problem. For me. And then, this bitch is so stupid. So, Lucien tells her about the cereal. They go home. And she's like... Lucian's like, just don't look at it, okay? Once you look at it, then it can kill you.
Would you just look at it?
Yeah. So then she goes home, and Tamlin's like, I gotta go kill this bitch. So he's like running around, in his doggy form. And Feyre is like looking out the window, like, when will my husband return from war, and sees her father in the garden. This bitch, this idiot, she thinks...
She's so dumb.
She is so stupid.
So dumb.
She thinks this man who has done jack all for the last 11 years to provide for his family, suddenly has the wherewithal to make it all the way to the spring court without an escort when she couldn't make it 50 feet out the front gate with Lucien before the bog shows up. She is so dumb on every level. It's just unbelievable. She's like, oh, my dad's here. Better run outside, when Tamlin and Lucien literally just coached me that I can't trust anything I see.
Oh,
and yeah, so then... And it's weird that the creature turns into anything you desire, and it actually is really sad.
Oh, it shows
It just
her dad.
means that she shows her it. Yeah, she wants her dad. That's like so sad. That like all she wants is for her dad to step up. It's really sad.
And what's crazy is that she still thinks that he can. She never loses hope in her dad, but Nesta did a long time ago. Mm-hmm. Nesta lost hope in him a long, long time ago. I do think that it is sad that it was her dad, and it wasn't like Nesta or somebody. Her dad came for her.
That's all she wanted, was for her dad to actually do something.
Yeah. Yeah. And so Tamlin obviously shows up, and he's like, and he gets rid of the bog. And he's like,
The puka.
wow, you're an idiot.
The puka in the bog.
And then he says to her, he's like, fool, if you were ever going to run away, at least do it in the daytime.
He's like, wow, you are stupid and illiterate. And oh yeah, this is the first time we find out that Feyre's illiterate too, because she's trying to make a map, and then she's like, fuck, I can't read. she's like, I've got to find a way out here, so I'm gonna make a map. Damn it, I forgot, I'm illiterate. I can't make a map. So she like starts to draw a map, and then Tamlin's hurt, so she's like, I can fix him. So, now begins this endless cycle of Feyre patching up Tamlin constantly and making him all better.
He's like, you can't write, can you? Murr.
Does he say that?
Yeah. So she says, he's like, what is that? And she snatches up the map. I thought I should learn my surroundings. And then he looks at her and he's like, you can't write, can you?
Yeah. So, okay. So here's my
She's
thing.
like, no, motherfucker, I can't.
I have a theory. I have a theory that, have you seen, like, there's like a cartoon someone wrote or TikTok or something like that where it's like, it's like Rhysand to Tamlin at the end when they're in the arena, and it's like, you didn't teach her to read? To Tamlin. Like, you had her all that time, you didn't even teach her how to read. And I had always, in my reread, I had never like fully processed that. And she's like, yeah, my mom never taught me to read. And then Tamlin's like, well, I could write a letter for you if you want. And I'm like, that is not a solution, Tamlin. That is literally the perfect example of Tamlin. Is instead of teaching Amanda Fish, he's like, I'll do it for you. I'll just do it for you. I'll make you completely dependent on me. Is like the most...
100%.
It's literally him. He's like, oh...
Rhys shocking her. She's going for number 2. He's like, no, bitch. What the fuck are you doing?
And then it makes you think, like, does Tamlin, like, let it slip to Amarantha that she can't read? You know what I mean?
He has to. Because it would have been too easy. She had to have known.
He's like, she's just an illiterate human. And Amarantha's like, perfect. I've got just the trial for her.
Lucian's like, bitch, choose one. I'm about to die.
And so
that's
then...
so funny.
One thing that I think is really interesting in this whole situation. First of all, we find out that Tamlin's heart is made of stone. Because Lucian's like, your heart's made of stone. I think he can after the spell's broken. At the end of the book. But that's actually why I think maybe it doesn't work. Because he can't love right at this point in the story.
That's why he has such a good poker face under the mountain. It's because he really doesn't care that much.
So...
Not in the way that someone in love would care.
Right. So Tamlin, she goes to his study, and there's a mural. This is really interesting to me. Has a cauldron held by female hands, is tipped over, and has words spilling out of it. And I wish I knew what the words were, but she's fucking illiterate. So I'm like, can we please go back to this at some point in the next couple books and see what it said with someone who can read, please? Because it's reminding me of the murals underneath the prison in Crescent City 3, and also the carvings in the cave in Crescent City 3, and also the paintings and murals and things underneath the Torrid Kesme in Tower of Dawn, showing a war and the Seven Courts and all of that. But it shows the Seven Courts, which I thought was interesting, and not the Dusk Court. But that existed.
It's perhaps some... Well, so no, not sparkling, but effervescent with small symbols, perhaps with some ancient fairy language. So it might have been word marks. Yeah.
Or like the ancient language of the Fae.
Put Bryce in there. Bryce will know what's up.
That's what I'm saying. But Nesta has seen the murals now underneath the prison. And so she's seen...
So now might be able to connect it all.
Mm-hmm. And she's seen the hologram in the prison. So I think that Nesta is Starborn. And I'll stand on my business on that. Yeah. But it makes me wonder, what's going on. So anyway, she's like, wow, that's crazy. Anyway, I'm going to go trap a cereal. She just decides. She's like, man.
She's over here. She's like, practice my words by day, trap cereals by night.
Yeah.
Add it to my resume.
So then she's like, Lucian's like, I'm not saying you should.
Grove of young birch trees, slaughter a chicken, double loop snare close to running water. Lucian just giving her shitty ass advice all the time.
Yeah, he's like, yeah, I'm not saying you should do it. I'm just saying, here's a WikiHow article on exactly how to do it. And I might be close enough, maybe. And it makes you wonder what he thought she was going to ask. Like, what did Lucian think Feyre was going to ask?
I think that Lucian thought that the cereal would tell her about Amarantha. Like, the truth about all of it. Mm-hmm. Because he knows that they're not bound. But he also has to realize this is a fucking illiterate 19-year-old. What good questions is she going to have? He needs to set her up with questions.
Okay,
but he doesn't.
This is the dumbest. I just remembered at this point in the story, Feyre still doesn't realize Tamlin is the High Lord of the Spring Court. She still doesn't understand.
Oh my god, that's so true. She doesn't know. Because then all of a sudden she's like, oh, you're a High Lord? Oh, so I like you now.
I'm sorry. I really do love Feyre. She is, she's the OG, and I really do love her a lot. However, this bitch is so dumb sometimes. So, she traps the cereal. Barely an inconvenience. It is so easy for Feyre. Again, this bitch is serving, and she is Superwoman. She's carving whole pony-sized wolves with one hand, carrying deer in the other. She is fighting for her life and managing to survive without the ability to read. And then she traps a cereal like it is no big deal. And you're telling me that this bitch is human? Fully human? Give me a break. Bryce Quinlan couldn't do this on her first day in Prithian. This is such a joke.
Tennis shoes.
Yeah. So she gets the Dementor. She traps the Dementor. And she's like, for the 50th time, is there any way I can go home? And the cereal's like, not unless you and your family want to die, which is interesting. Interesting answer. And then she's like, what do you know about Tamlin? And he's like, I know a lot about the High Lord. And she's like, oh, he's a High Lord? Yes, bitch. What the fuck do you mean? She's so stupid. So then Feyre's like, what can I do about the Blight? And Suriel's like, stay with the High Lord. He will keep you safe. So I did. The iconic book talk sound. And then the Suriel tells her all about Hybern. And that the humans were all killed, and that he has a throne of bones, and that he's nasty, and that he wants to kill all the humans, and his commanders betrayed him, and they're a deceiver. Which I'm like, who's the deceiver?
I think he was meaning because they're like, nearly 5 decades ago, one of his commanders disobeyed him, the deceiver. I think that's Amarantha. Because 5 decades ago, she was like, that's when she did the whole under the mountain thing. She is, but she took that pause break because it talks about it later that she says, when they're talking about her, and he's annoyed with her because she decided to go on a side quest. So she's been coming over here for a long time, like gaining everyone's trust and doing all these things. And then she was like, I want the power for myself. And she wants to like trick all these High Lords, basically best them. And then she does that the whole 50 years ago thing. And Hybern's just been kind of chilling out. Like, she's loyal to him, but she wants hers too.
It's giving Maeve, and I've always thought that. It's giving, I want the power for myself. I want it for me. And I'm not going to be under the thumb of a man, which is literally Maeve's whole story. Like, I'm not going to let any man control me.
Yeah, and I think they calling her the deceiver, not that she deceived Hybern, but that she deceived the people of Prithian, because she came over here with like good intentions or whatever, saying like, "Oh, I'm coming here to help," and you know, King Hybern is all sad and he wants to do better, blah blah blah. Let's all be friends. And then she deceived everybody and trapped everyone under the mountain. So I think that's why
She
he was
honestly,
referring to her. Because
honestly,
after that, you know,
can we have a moment? Can we have a moment for Amarantha? I'm gonna be honest with you. We'll get to her in the next part of this series, but if somebody broke my sibling's heart, I'd do the same thing.
yeah, I'm not mad at her about it.
Listen, Amarantha does some fucked up shit to Rhysand. I will admit that. However, and to Feyre, you know, she's kind of a fucked up person. However, she did girl boss her way to being like the High Queen, basically. And so, can we really fault her for that? I mean,
yeah, no.
I'm just saying, she's on a 50-year vengeance, which 50 years to the Fae is like nothing. You know what I mean? So, like, I'm gonna let, personally, Feyre, who are you to stand in the way? Like, Tamlin insulted her sister. Let this bitch get her revenge, okay? let her. Jurian basically dunked on Amarantha's sister. Allow her this. Let Amarantha have this, Feyre. So
that's all she needs.
Yeah. The blight thing is interesting. The fact that it's like spreading and causing magic to act strangely reminds me of a certain Adderlin, a certain area where magic doesn't work because of Vogue power, which I've had a theory that Amarantha's Vogue. Again, I'll talk about this in the next part, but I have a theory about the Vogue and Hybern. And it's just interesting to think about like a blight, some kind of rot, which reminds me a lot of the Vogue and the Asteri for that matter, like some kind of parasite, a blight. Like a blight, when you think of a blight, it's like a epidemic, you know? So it'd be interesting for it to be some kind of, it's like a sickness. That's how Tamlin describes it. He's like, it's a disease in the land.
Yeah, which is he does not like her, so calling her a disease is
kind of honestly a little rude, Tam. But it's interesting to be like, there's a disease when that is literally what the Vogue and the Asteri are, like a sickness. And now we know because of CC3 that these are beings in their world, you know? So, Suriel's like, by the way, let me go because the Naga are here and they're gonna eat us. So, Feyre's like, letting you go, and
I think she really thought that she wasn't gonna free him. I think the Suriel was like, oh shit, this is how I'm gonna die.
But I'm sad. This is when the relationship with the Suriel and Feyre, this is the beginning of it all. This is the moment that comes so full circle by the end of the story, where Feyre shows her true colors of being very honest to a fault. Like, it's why Aquawar felt so weird to me, because she is so not deceptive. Like, she's very, like, noble. And she has a lot of compassion. So I love it. And
I think it's really interesting because before the Naga shows up, she's like, are you not a member of any court? And he's like, I am a member of no court. I am older than the High Lords, older than Prithian, older than the bones of this world. So the Suriel has seen some shit. And then the Suriel, like 3 seconds later, is begging Feyre. He's like, human, like, please don't let me end here. It's seen, like, you know, things come and go and all those things, but it realizes, like, this is how I die. It can die easily. And so it really goes to show that how hard it would be to trap one of those because that thing has been able to live for so long that no one's been able to trap and kill it. But Feyre, illiterate 19-year-old's like, check my double loop snare, motherfucker. And then she ends up freeing it, choosing to free something that's been there for so long, and probably dying herself, most likely dying herself. So it shows a lot, I think. But yeah, their bond, I think, is really important. And it comes from that moment where she chooses to free the cereal instead of her own life.
Yeah.
Because if she would have ran, they probably just would have went for the easy snack anyways.
Yeah, and the cereal, I mean, without the cereal throughout the story, Feyre would have been fucked. So, like, who knows where she would have ended up by the end without the cereal.
Yeah.
I love this character. The cereal is top 5 characters in all of ACOTAR, if not even top 3. I mean, what an incredible helper for the narrative, like from a literary standpoint. Like, what an amazing narrator in the story. And then also, like, honestly, probably most beloved ACOTAR character would be the cereal. Like, we were talking about this on the Whimsy Gossip podcast, that, like, you know, you can cast any ACOTAR character incorrectly and people are going to be mad, but if you didn't cast the cereal correctly, you are screwed, because honestly, the cereal might be the most beloved ACOTAR character. Like, if you got the cereal wrong, you've really royally messed up. And
you can even go quirky with it too. Like, you don't have to pick up like some creepy guy or whatever. Like, you could have someone who's funny. Like, we all, like, the whole mantra we have is this real, like, sipping tea, you know?
Yeah. It's so like, funny to me how the fandom has just taken this character and just run with it, too. Isn't that funny? Like,
yeah. I love how everyone's dressing up as the cereal at, like, balls and carrying around a little teacup and stuff like that.
And it's like, really, we only have, like, 3 or 4 scenes with the cereal throughout the series.
Yeah.
And
the whole series.
And yet we have more time with Jurian. And Jurian is a really good character. Yeah. I love Jurian. He's actually really funny and a really good character. But the cereal by far gets more love from the community than Jurian does, even though they actually play a very similar role, where Jurian offers Feyre a lot of advice and guidance throughout the story. And Jurian plays more of a pivotal role in, like, the success of Feyre's mission. He's a really interesting character, yet we actually have more of an attachment to the cereal, who really doesn't do much, but is, from the beginning...
she, whatever you want to talk it, just drops these fucking bombs. Yeah. It's like, beep, peace out.
Love the cereal. So it's interesting too at this point. Also, Feyre kills a Naga again. I feel like
which is
the
pretty
evidence that she's not human just stacks up and up and up and up. Like, like how have the children of the blessed who prepare for this, how are they not surviving by the dozen? But she survives, like, all of this, you know?
Yeah.
And so Lucien, before she left to get the cereal, Lucian's like, hey, I'm going to be close by. So if you need help, scream and I'll be there. But instead, Tamlin shows up. Which to me, I'm like, man, the minute that Feyre left, Lucien went to Tamlin and was like, this bitch is trapping a cereal. Go get her. Go get your bitch. And then Tamlin's the one that shows up instead of Lucien. I wish Lucien would have been the one to show up and sweep Proverby, but no, it doesn't happen.
Idiot. He said he hesitates too. That he actually hesitated for just a moment. You forgot about that? That Lucien hesitated for like a millisecond?
No. I just had a complete...
Oh, you had a moment. What was the moment?
So Lucien... This is the point in the story where Lucien tells Feyre that iron doesn't do anything. But it does, just not to Prythian and Fae. So tell me how Feyre and the children of the blessed believe that iron affects the Fae. when we know now that the gates were open? It does affect the Fae, just the wrong kind of Fae. How do they know that? I mean, to this day, if we
Old
think
stories?
that though the portals were closed so long ago, Rhysand doesn't even know about his heritage. That's how long ago it was. Amryn is doing everything she fucking can through CC3 to keep that shit on lock. Unless you were in the prison, you probably don't know about it.
I don't know.
So I'm just saying, if her mom, I think it would be very interesting if they're shifter fae and they're stuck in their human form. Like Aelin. And then when they have magic imbued into them, they're able to shift into their fae form. It would make sense too why, I mean, Aelin can wield more than one type of magic. She's just blessed by Mala. Therefore, she can use fire. But she actually can use water too. She's a multi-elemental.
Interesting.
So is Feyre. And we know that the shifter line continued, the bloodline continued in Midgard. Why couldn't it have continued in Prythian?
I don't know. That's a good point.
How could this have lived on for so long? And Lucian, they're like, the Fae can't lie. It's like they can lie, but you know who can smell lies? Witches. Witches, dog. So what if these, the things about the Fae that aren't actually true, the children of the blessed,
High priestesses.
the children of the blessed, Aelin was blessed by Mala.
Yeah, Mala. Damn. Did we just stumble on something?
Whoa.
So they could be witches, or they could be shifter fae.
Why not both? I've had a theory
both,
that Minorian children and Galathinius Whitethorn children could, intermingle. Why couldn't we have, children of mixed parentage? That mind-blowing thing aside.
That was intense.
That's crazy.
I mean, it makes sense, though.
Imagine. I need now that CC3 is out, I need to sit down and try to make a timeline. Because that would tell us a lot.
I was looking at the timeline of Brennan. I think the portal opening in Crescent City the first time, and then when they close the portal, and then right before the prison's made, so when they shove her back through the portal and the sister and the mom stay there and they close it all, I think Brennan is alive at that point. So I think, based off of rough history, 1,000, 2,000 years it seems for everybody, I think Aelin's alive at the same time Bryce is.
Yeah, I think that they're all,
I mean,
regardless.
They do. Yeah.
I think that Aelin could also be every time. I mean, that's exciting, something exciting to celebrate, for sure.
So anyways.
So okay. All of the Massiverse aside,
Tamlin shows up, saves the day.
yeah. And then they go home and Alice is there. And I completely forgot about Alice. Alice, another character I wish would have come full circle by the end of the series, but it's fine. Maybe she still will. So Alice she has her nephews, and she's telling Feyre about it. She's yeah, my sister and her mate, which first of all, mates are really rare, but her sister had a mate.
Yeah.
So that's interesting.
Yeah.
Who's Alice?
They're from Summer Court?
Something like that. So then she, which I'm just saying, Tamlin really is the island of misfit toys. Like, he is taking in everybody from every court. He's like, sure, why not? You can hang out. Sure, why not? You can hang out. To like anyone that shows up.
I wonder if he feels bad about like.
I think he's really lonely.
His relationship with because him and Reese used to be best friends.
Yeah, I mean, he's all alone. Reese's dad kills his whole family. So Tamlin is like goes from having like brothers and it's like mom and dad and like and got like this huge court and then like everybody dies. And so I think he's like trying to fill the void of his family with people, including Feyre, and never like heals that wound. Like very clearly never heals that wound. And if you believe in the Reese's sister was Tamlin's mate, then that makes it even deeper because it's like, you know, did he lose his mate? You know, as if Amarantha is his mate, then like his mate's evil. Like that's a whole other thing. You know, like is Tamlin rejecting the bond? You know, there's lots of theories with that. But Tamlin's like, your family are idiots for not seeing like how much you did for them, and then he's like, you know, some of us were pro-human, actually. And, yeah, it's pretty much... You're welcome, by the way, for that. It's pretty much his whole thing. He's like, yeah, you're lucky, actually, that we were on your side. And then he, like, tells Feyre, like, I glamored them, so don't even worry. Like, you're like Feyre, like I told them you were sick, so like they're not gonna come look for you, but like don't like if like your family's gonna be safe basically. And then Feyre's like, well, I guess if they're safe, I do like I can enjoy myself. I do like that scared the piss out of me.
Why is it always my house that's so chaotic? Like, what is everyone doing? It's like dead silent, and then I get on this, and everyone's like, time to be loud. And I'm like, okay, cool. Thanks, guys. Good job. So then he's like, oh, I got a library and a gallery.
But it's like really fucking filthy, so I'm gonna go clean that, and I'll show it to you when it's not horrifying, which is interesting because it's like why was it closed up?
He said when he inherited it, and it seemed like a waste of time to have the servants clean, but I don't believe that.
Why is it closed up? That's so weird. So Feyre wakes up, and this is like the worst thing. But also, I have a theory that goes along with this. So Tamlin brings in this blue fairy from the summer court, was dumped on again. Tamlin is like the orphanage for all mistreated fae in the world. So Tamlin brings this fae in, and the fairy's just screaming like, she took my wings, and Feyre's like, can you help the fairy? And Tamlin's like, I could heal him, but like I don't have enough magic. Like she's like, could you give him his wings back? And Tamlin's like, yeah, I could, but I don't have enough magic. So this is the interesting thing. The fairy's wings are cut off. It's giving what is it called in Crescent City where they cut their wings off?
Oh, the living death?
The living death. It's giving the living death. So then I'm like, okay. Well, also, there's more winged fae than Illyrians, which is interesting.
Yeah. I never really pictured any of them with wings, except for Illyrians.
And like the Seraphim. And like there's also the Adder. But then you've got this blue guy with the wings. So I'm like, could the Illyrians that have their wings hurt by, like, the misogynistic fucks, could they have their wings regrown and have functional wings like the living death? So, like, would Emery...
Maybe, because they're saying that it's not clotting. Like, his blood isn't clotting.
So I'm like...
So maybe if they clotted, then they could?
Yeah. Is this a situation where the wings are gone, therefore, you know, they can't grow back? Or is this a situation where, like, because Tamlin just doesn't have enough magic, he can't bring them back, you know? And, like, Rhysand accuses Tamlin of, like, having his sister and mom's wings mounted, which then was very reminiscent of CC, where they mount the wings.
Yeah.
But they grow them back. So I'm like, well, maybe the women, like, could Emery fly again? You know? Maybe.
That'd be cool.
Yeah, but she'd have to undergo the living
I think she
death.
could.
I want her to. I want her to fly, baby. So, this is, like, a really sad
I want her to be faster
moment.
than all the rest of them, too.
Amen. Bigger wingspan. I hated this moment because it was so sad, and, like, you know, Tamlin basically holds, like, mini funeral for this fairy. But then also Feyre has this, like, kind of moment where she's like, oh yeah, fairies are like people too. And so she's like, sorry I killed Andrus. For the first time, she's like, I'm sorry I killed this guy. My bad. And then she's like, I'm sorry I hated the Fae so much. So now Tamlin's like, Operation Make Feyre Fall in Love with Me is for 1,000% go. Because now she doesn't hate me. So you're telling me there's a chance. It's pretty much where Tamlin's at this point.
So you're saying there's a chance.
Yeah, literally. So, yeah. So then Tamlin's like, I can't do this without Lucian. So they go, Tamlin and Lucian are like, let's go to, like, this cool little pool. Then this pool has been a point of contention, conversation in this community from its inception. And it is Tamlin's Pool of Starlight. What the hell? So he's like, yeah, we're in the spring court. We're going to this beautiful place. Also, I happen to have a pond made of pure starlight. Anyway, moving on. And it's like, hold on, what? So they're walking there, and Tamlin's like, also, let me tell you about Lucian and give you an info dump about Lucian before we get to the pool. So, like, he's like, Lucian is the youngest son of the High Lord of the Autumn Court, and he has 7 brothers, and Autumn Court is a dick. The guy sucks, and he explains to Feyre something that's very important, which is that the court, the person who inherits the High Lord title is not the oldest, it's the strongest. So Lucian does not give a shit at all, but that doesn't mean he's not the strongest. And I find it interesting that all the brothers go after him. I think it's because he is the strongest.
Yeah, I agree.
But he falls in love with this woman, Fae, not woman, this female. And Baron, we know him, is like, I think the fuck not, and kills her. And
in front of
Lucian
him.
Lucian has to watch, and it's extremely traumatizing. So then he's like, I'm leaving, bye. So then his brothers are like, no, you're not, which is weird. That they're like, you're not leaving. Like, you'd think that'd be, like, one less thing for them to worry about. But they're like, no, you're not leaving. So they are, 3 of the brothers go after him. And we think that it's Eris and 2 brothers, but we actually find out later that Eris wasn't there.
So
or
another
maybe
one
Eris
survived. He killed one and Tamlin killed the other. But yeah, it doesn't say which one.
But I'm wondering, it's like Eris, he's like, how do you think that Lucian made it out alive? Which makes me think that the 3 brothers were Eris, and 2 of them Tamlin and Lucian killed 2 of them, but that Aerys somehow helped. Which actually then helps
So
Aerys'
instead of Lucian
chances.
killing one, Aerys kills one. Or something
Or
like that.
maybe Aerys killed them both. You know what I mean?
Aerys is I think he's going to be huge because he's sneaky. And no one knows the truth. I feel like he tells so many lies to so many people that everyone's like, oh, he's a piece of shit. And he's like, this is exactly what I need you to think I am.
Yeah. Well, he basically, in one fell swoop, took his chances of becoming High Lord from 1 in 7 to 1 in 4. Because he kills 2 of his brothers, and the third one abandons his title. So now we've got a 1 in 4 chance that he's going to be the High Lord. So, I mean, he's going to be good. So then Tamlin claimed Lucian as his own, which is an interesting concept, because it makes you think, like, could Lucian become the High Lord of the Spring Court in the event of Tamlin's untimely death? Perhaps. So, he's emissaries. And then Feyre's like, that's a cool story. I'm going to go skinny dipping in Starlight. So she goes and Tamlin is like, so tell me more about your family and how they lost their fortune, which is an interesting story to pivot to. Interesting.
She said my father was called the Prince of Merchants, which I feel like is important. I don't know why, but I feel like it is. A name
inherited from his father. Mm-hmm. So she says it was all a lie. A name that masked 3 generations of bad debts, which again is interesting when you think about timing, because that's like about 100 years, which is when Hybern came into power. That was when the war started or ended or happened. Yeah. So interesting. So creditors. So he sank his whole wealth into 3 ships with invaluable spices and cloth. Spider silk? Perhaps?
That'd be
All
cool.
the ships sank and were left for nothing. All 3 ships. Really strange when you know what happens at the very end.
Yeah. 3 of them.
Creditors came. He couldn't pay them. They broke his knee while Feyre watched, which is crazy. So it's interesting because he can't pay them, so they break his knee and then leave. But she screams at them to stop, so then they leave. She peed herself, but that's neither here nor there.
Watery bowels.
IBS queen, Feyre Archeron. So she she screams at them to stop, so they do. Which again, if they're not human, and that's why they come for him and all of that jazz, it makes you wonder if they know that Feyre isn't human and they're scared and then they leave. You know? It's just interesting. Why break 1 knee? That's your payment for 3 ships? That's kind of interesting. I don't know. I just think they would have killed him. Or taken his daughters. Maybe they thought
they were going to get the money or something. Yeah, take his daughters.
Maybe. Yeah. So.
I don't know.
Lucian extends the white flag at this point because I think he's damn, your life sucks actually. Sorry, I didn't really come help you when the Suriel was getting attacked by the Naga. My bad. Here's a knife as a apology, which is kind of the hottest apology ever. Be here's a knife. That's kind of sexy.
Reason number 7,000 why Lucian's better than Tamlin.
So, yeah, they're laughing, and this is also a funny image that they're swimming in the Starlight Pond, but then you remember that Tamlin's still wearing his mask. He's swimming with the mask on.
I forget about that.
The mask is on. The mask stays on. And so then... I forget how much time goes by in this book, too, because at this point, you know, they get back to the manor, and Tamlin's like, hey, remember that dirty-ass gallery I told you about? She's clean. Let's go. So he takes Feyre there, and Feyre cries like a bitch. She cries. She's like, it's so beautiful. And then she's like, she's like, damn, I'm inspired. I'm gonna start painting. And weeks go by. Weeks go by.
Oh, he writes her the poem. Doesn't he? Somewhere here. I can't. So he takes all the words that she was trying to learn. She had wrote down words she didn't recognize or words that she needed to learn. And then he made a fucking poem out of them because he's lame. And it was just horrible. Horrible.
Yeah. So then, Tamlin's like, also, by the way, in case you didn't already feel bad for all of us and my horrible life being the king of everything, my dad and my brothers actually sucked butt, just saying. And they actually had slaves. And my mom really loved my dad, but yeah, he was pretty much an ass. And Feyre's like, oh, that sucks. And they're like, oh yeah. He has to read the poem to her because she's like, I can't fucking read. How many times do I have to say I can't read?
After he's telling her, and he's like, I realized at an early age that fighting and killing were about the only things I was good at. And she's like, I doubt that. And then he goes, oh, I could play a mean fiddle.
The way, I do not want a single one of you fuckers in the comment section of this being like, oh, I never fell for Tamlin. Shut up. Yes, you did. You read that line and you said, you know what, I'll let that one slide. And you fell in love with this goddamn fiddle playing menace anyway. Like we all did. So I don't want to hear a word of it. It is unbelievable. We all fell in love with this man.
Oh my God.
I play a mean fiddle. All I do, my resume is I can read, I can kill people, and I can play a mean fiddle. And we said, sign me the fuck up. So
bad. It's so bad.
So then, calamari time.
As I like to call it, calamari time. Because that's
calamari time.
That's all I think about.
We'll take calamari. Okay. So
listen, this is so exciting that this happens. There's lots of things happening here in this one. So it's a festival, it's a spring ceremony, and then they're all like trying to be low key about it. But basically, what has to happen is they take the energy. The High Lord has to take the energy and like put it back in the land by fucking somebody. Long story short. And there's a bunch of maidens that are like volunteer to get chosen, and he has to go in a cave. And they're like, Feyre, shut the fuck up. Stay in the locked mansion. Do whatever you want in the locked mansion. Just stay in the fucking locked mansion. Do not go outside. Don't go outside. Don't fucking go out there. Like, don't be stupid. Don't be stupid. Yeah. And they keep telling her, Tamlin's not gonna be himself. You leave him alone. And just don't go out there. Ignore everything you hear, no matter what's going on. Blah, 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 blah. So, what does she do?
She's like, I'm going to do the opposite of everything that you just told me to do. And they're like, she's like, actually, you know what? Sex party sounds like a lot of fun. So she goes downstairs, and this is the iconic moment. The moment of ACOTAR happens. There's 3 fairies. They're like, hey girl, you look pretty hot walking around. So then someone grabs her shoulders and is like, There you are. I've been looking for you. Howl's Moving Castle reference. A little Howl's Moving Castle moment because Sarah was watching the movie when she wrote this book, I'm convinced. And she turns and she's like, "It's the most beautiful man I've ever seen." Stars in her eyes. And he's got black hair and violet eyes. And then he's like, "All right, bye," and leaves. And Lucian's like, "Bitch, Lucian's story, I swear to God, throughout all of ACOTAR is telling people to do things and no one listening to Lucian. Callan Mai, perfect example. Lucian's like, "I have a proposition for you. Perhaps stay safe, perhaps. Maybe don't be murdered, raped, and killed on the side of the road." And Feyre's like, "I'll try my chances, actually." And Lucian's like, "Leave. Now, please." So, this is what's interesting to me. He takes her back to the manor. He's like, all 7 High Lords perform the rite every year. That's why Rhys is there on Callan Mai. All the High Lords are there. Makes you think, does that mean, like, is Amarantha for Rhysand? Like, is Rhysand? Has Rhysand been partaking in this rite?
Oh, maybe.
It says the 7 High Lords perform the Great Rite every year.
Maybe.
I thought I had missed that. All 7 High Lords perform the Great Rite every year.
I don't know.
Each High Lord must perform the Great Rite, which consists of allowing powerful magic to enter their bodies and seize control of them, causing the High Lord to attempt to find the maiden and have sex with her. So then, when Rhysand finds her, Feyre is the maiden.
Yeah.
There you are. I've been looking for you. He's performing the rite. But he is such that man. He's like, "I could never, ever take you unwillingly." And Tamlin, meanwhile, is like, "I'm a bite you. I'm a bite you."
So he's like, he shows up. So he gets her back to Solution's like, "Okay, stay in the fucking castle, you dumbass." Well, then she's like, "Oh, I'm hungry. I'm gonna go find food," because she's stupid. And then Tamlin finds her, and he's like in the shadows, going somewhere. And she's like, "I'm gonna get a snack." And he's like, "You look like a snack." And he's going kind of apeshit, and he's like, "You drove me mad, blah, 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 blah." And then he fucking bites her.
Mm-hmm. But I'm gonna be honest with you. I'm gonna keep it real. This is one of the hottest scenes in the entire series. It is so sexy. I cannot. Okay, first of all, it is interesting to me, to rewind, he has to kill a white stag.
What?
Tamlin, in part of this ritual, he has to kill a white stag.
Oh.
And then go into a sacred cave.
Oh, that's right.
And there is a theory that Tamlin is Ashriver. He has Ashriver eyes. And he can shift at will into his High Lord form.
Interesting. Maybe.
And then he has to kill a white stag? And then find this maiden.
Suspicious.
It's also reminding me of CC3 when Lydia is talking about fertility ritual that happens, in which she conceives her twins.
It could have been.
Where she's basically hunted down. Yeah. And she said that this comes from her distant ancestors. Is this a clue that... Because when I read Throne of Glass, Aedion reminded me a lot of Tamlin. Like, I just imagined Tamlin for Aedion.
Yeah.
He's just like this blonde, buff warrior type. So is this an Ash River thing? It's
Could
giving Ash River Galathinius vibes to me.
Interesting.
And then Tamlin, Lucian's like, Tamlin isn't the only one that gets to do this, which also means that there are multiple white stags just like chilling in the spring court. Again, how do you have a pool of starlight and like white stags running around, and the rumors of iron actually weaken you and that you can't lie? Like it's just a lot.
There's a portal there.
It's a lot of Throne of Glass references, which she had just come out of writing Throne of Glass to write this book.
Yeah,
But-
I don't think she was fully done. I think she did A Court of Thorns and Roses.
Yeah, in the
And then
middle
she-
of Tog.
Yeah,
It was like, I think around the EOS times.
yeah.
So, all that to say, knowing what we know now, post CC3, I don't think it's a coincidence at all. I think that there's
Authors do go
relation
back to
there.
what they know.
Yeah, and I think it's like the easiest thing in the world to write. She's already written a relation between two universes with writing, and we know too. Like, this is just massive me making speculation, but she did say in an interview recently that she's writing a story that's been very emotional for her. So with characters that she's revisiting, that she said was really emotional to write, and I think that
Interesting.
that's interesting with the end of CC3 giving the nods to the Galathiniuses.
Yeah.
And, yeah. Every time I reread ACOTAR, I'm like, this gives Aelin. It's giving Aelin vibes. So, yeah. Tamlin corners her, bites her neck. It's so hot. I don't care what anyone says. This is so hot. It's always hot to me when a guy will, like, he'll, like, bite you just hard enough, you know, but, like, not too hard. And then he's like, don't ever disobey me. Ever again. And
she's
Feyre's like, I'm gonna do exactly that all the time. But okay, whatever you say. And so, yeah, she like wakes up, and she's got like a bruise on her neck. And she's like, oh damn, that's crazy. And then she goes down for breakfast and they get in a fight. And Tamlin brings her roses. And this is the second time there are roses in the story. She has a rose. At one point, she like cuts her finger, and then he like kisses her finger and like heals it. And then this is the second time Tamlin brings her roses and is like, "I'm sorry that I bit you and I was an asshole and had to fuck some lady last night." And then Feyre's like, fine, I guess I kind of want to fuck you too. So she puts on the dress, you know, and Tamlin's like, you look clean and beautiful. And what a concept. He's not just like, your hair looks clean. And he's like, you look nice. So then
And then he's like, oh, and then she's like, I'm going to give you a painting.
yeah. And then she paints her whole life. I mean, to be fair, what else can she really give him?
Well, she can't read
And
and write.
Yeah, she can't fucking read or write. She can't do shit. She has no money. She can't leave. So, I mean, you know, it's fine. The craziest painting, I've got to say, she paints the cottage she grew up in. Okay, that's, like, pretty normal, you know. And she's like, I painted my ex-boyfriend, Isaac. And, like, it's a little weird because you said you didn't really, like, have any feelings for him. But, like, and you're, like, staying in this guy's house and you painted a picture of another guy. Whatever. She paints a picture of her dad getting his fucking knee broken.
One right after the other.
That is crazy. That is crazy shit. I painted the most traumatizing moment of my life. Here it is, my dad getting his fucking leg broken. And then she's like, and here's the woods where I killed your friend. And Tamlin's like, I love it.
I want that one.
I love it. Oh, I'll call it the scene of the crime. And then he puts it, he's like, I want it. It's like, it's already in your fucking house. What do you mean you want it? What are you going to do with it? So
Oh my God.
she keeps
so
it.
funny.
And he's like, she's like, I want to help. And he's like, this is like the best thing ever. He says, I want you here where I can look after you, where I can come home and know you're here painting and safe. And it's like the culmination of all of Mist and Fury. But frankly, I would literally sell my soul for that life. Yeah. To just wake up, eat bread, paint, go to sleep. What a life.
I'm just here to exist.
And so she's like, I'm gonna go to bed, but I'm gonna leave my door unlocked, see what happens. Nothing happens. But
And then they go flirt in a field.
yeah, and he kisses her eyelids.
That
This
was
is
the
the
weirdest
second time.
thing. That
It's
made me so uncomfortable. Why was
It's
that
the
so
second
weird?
time that he uses magic through kissing. And the great right is sex. So it is really interesting because like it's like all of his physical like love making and stuff is magic. And spring is often associated with fertility. So it is interesting. But that's when he removes the glamour.
Yeah, because he feels like she's ready.
And then Feyre again is a dumbass and she's like, maybe I can just take your mask off. And it doesn't come off. she's like, have you ever tried just taking it off? So now
Have you ever tried taking it off?
Yeah,
No,
have you ever
Feyre, I
tried-
haven't.
Yeah. So then she gets back to the house, and have you seen the like the funny thing where it's like, what if the whole time like Feyre's walking around and she's like sneaking through the house, but all the servants can see her, but she can't see them because she's glamour. Yeah. So now Feyre's like, damn, there are a lot of people here, and that's not good. So then this is kind of fucked up. They get back to the house, and she's like walking through the gardens, and there's a head on a stake.
Oh yeah, I forgot about
And
that.
it's got the night court insignia on its fucking head.
So who the fuck brought that? I think Reese just did it because he felt like it.
Yeah. Well, Reese has hidden all that she knows of, Amarantha knows of, is the Court of Nightmares. So it couldn't have been any of Kier's guys, too.
But the next morning, I found a head in the garden.
Yeah. With the Night Court insignia, that part is pretty crazy. Because it's like such a beloved symbol now for the fandom. But it's really funny because it's like just stamped into this motherfucker's forehead. So now, so that was spring solstice. So that's how much time jump we have now, is now it's summer solstice. So how long is she even in Prithian by the time that Under the Mountain happens? Like 6 months?
I have no idea. I don't think
Something
it really
like that?
tells us, but probably would be my guess. Past winter into spring. So yeah.
So, and now summer solstice. So she puts on a dress. Second time. Good job, Farah. And now she actually gets to go, and Lucian's like, just don't drink the wine, okay? So Feyre's like, oh my god, I'm gonna drink the wine. So now it is the time of Feyre dancing. She gets tipsy. Tamlin's like, don't
gets
drink
hammered.
her. So then, dance for me, Feyre. So then she's like fucking pop locking and dropping it at the summer solstice.
One of the musicians looked up from his fiddling, and I halted.
You weren't lying when you said you played a mean fiddle. So then she's like, this
So
part, this
cringy.
was the, I thought she was like
Dance,
gonna like
Farrah.
die. Yeah. I thought she was gonna die at this point. I don't know why, but in the book it like gave me so much weird feelings. So they dance together and they kiss and they watch the sun come up together and they kiss again, and I'm like, just bang already? I mean, come on.
Yeah.
So
It was the happiest moment of my life.
that's pretty sad.
Boo.
So, the blight. So, it burned through their magic and broke apart their minds. Really interesting. And I don't know that we ever really get an explanation as to what happens in the Winter Court fully with this blight that kills the younglings. But next up, Lucian's like, hey guys, so the kissing and everything is fun, but actually, bad shit's going on with the younglings. And they got Anakin Skywalker in the Winter Court. So, they're dead. 24, okay, 24. Everybody is affected except the Night Court. So...
Oh, and then he's like, Farrah, halt, get to the window. Because Daddy shows up.
So, yeah, so Rhys shows up. And, well, okay, so Lucian's like, well, everybody is dealing with this except for Rhys. And then Rhys shows up. It's literally like Beetlejuice. He just like pops into the room. Farrah stands behind a curtain, and then she's like, oh my god, it's the guy that saved me from getting friggin'
The hot one.
the guy with the hot guy. So she realizes that it's a gift. The severed head. He's like, it was a gift, you're welcome. And I'm like, is that the guy that you'll have to tell me because you have it, is the guy that he gave the head of, is that the one of the fae that tried to murk Farrah? I can't remember. That's what I thought. Rhys was like, don't you touch my woman. Don't you touch my woman. So he,
I'm not gonna lie, whenever like Tamlin tries to talk shit and he's like, and then Rhys was like, I was slaughtering on the battlefield before you even born.
Yeah. It's so
Yes,
good.
you were.
And then,
Yes,
so
you
then
were.
Rhys sees the plate on the table because Tamlin's big stupid. And he's like, I can see Farrah. And then he's like, who are you? And Lucian's like, this is my girlfriend. And Rhys is like, okay, no. So then he
He's
looks
like, "You don't
inside
get
her
girlfriends.
head.
What the fuck are you talking about?"
No, I'm not. Do I look stupid? So then he's like, oh, this is interesting. So then Rhys is like looking at her mind and he's like, oh, interesting. She wants to fuck you, bro. And Tamlin's like, oh, this is, okay, so he's like, Rhys is like, yeah, she could have been the one for you, but it's too late. And I'm like, dude, it's too late because that's your mate and you know it. Mm-hmm. You know it. It's too late. It's too late for Tamlin because Rhys is going to have her one way or another. And then he's like, Amarantha's going to love this one. But Rhys is like, beg. This was like such a hot moment too. So sexy. Rhys is like,
the thing is,
on
too,
your knees.
We're all like, and we're in Silver Flames, and everyone's like, oh, Rhys is evil. But we need to remember how Rhys was like, yeah, I'm an asshole. That's fine. That's fine.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean,
I ain't
he's
mad
bad.
about it. I don't give a fuck.
But it's so
I ain't
good.
mad about it.
It's
Yep.
so good. So Tamlin gets on his knees, and this is when Feyre does the most unhinged behavior in the whole book. She's like, my name, here's a fairy who is going to kill me. He is going to hunt me down to the ends of the earth, and I need to give him a fake name so that he doesn't know it's me. She could have made up a name. She could have said the name of someone that was dead. She uses a real life person's name. She's like, Claire Better, girl who's done nothing to me ever in my life. We'll just name a random girl from my village. Rhysand's like, cool beans. He's gonna go give that name. And Rhys is like, my mate's a genius. She gave me a fake name. She did not give you a fake name. She gave you a very real name of a real person. Because she's so stupid. So, Claire Better, poor girl. Pour one out for Claire Better, everybody. It's so sad. So then Tamlin, apparently just now realizing how dangerous it is to bring a human to break Amarantha's spell into his house.
Really? It was dangerous?
He's like, oh man, I better send you home. So he's like, people are going to hurt you if they find out what you mean to me. That's the point, Tamlin. She's giving you a deal that's impossible, you fuck. So he's like, you don't have to leave forever. But she's like, yeah, I am never going to make it back here again. So YOLO. And then this is the dumbest part of the whole book. When she's like, it'll be easier for you because I'm covered in thorns.
It's like a cheesy Twilight sentence. Like, as if
so
you
much
could
worse.
outrun me.
Yeah. It's so much worse when you have read, like, Throne of Glass and Crescent City, where I'm not saying that Feyre had a good life. She clearly had a rough life. But give me any character in any other ACOTAR book, and I will show you someone who has had it about 1 trillion times worse than Feyre. And then she's like, I'm covered in thorns. Girl, you had a
Prickly
an
sour.
average. Yeah. Aelin was tortured. Aelin had to grow up to be an assassin and then serve the man
At
that
8.
murdered her parents. And you just had to, like, skin a wolf. And, like, your sister's kind of a bitch. And then your dad's leg broke. That's pretty much your life. And you're like, I'm covered in thorns. It's just so silly. But then she's like, all right, I'm gonna fuck this guy. So they fuck. It's not very good smut. I mean, it's like, okay.
I
But
think she's leaving the good shit for later.
yeah, no, 100%. I mean, this man doesn't hold a candle. He does not know where the G-spot is. He does not. And then Tamlin, being the corny motherfucker that he is like, I love you, thorns and all. And she doesn't reciprocate. And all could have ended right then and there. But instead, she does not reciprocate. She's like, all right, night, night. He's like, I love you. And she's like, okay, good night. Thank you. Good night. And just goes to bed. So then the next day, Lucian is pissed. Lucian is so mad. I would be too. Lucian, our guy, clever as a fox, foxy boy. He's like, maybe she'll get it. We can't talk about the curse, but maybe she'll figure it out. And she doesn't. And he's like, I did not think you, I knew you were illiterate, but I didn't think you were fucking stupid. And she's like, no, I'm dumb. I'm dumb. So, again, Tamlin's like, Tamlin's like, I love you. And she's like, thanks. And leaves. So, twice he's like, I love you. And she's like, thank you.
An idiot.
So
Then she goes home.
yeah, she just goes home.
And then everyone's like, where have you been? Let's throw a ball in your honor.
Yep, and then she's like, immediately, she's like, I definitely shouldn't have left. Remember how I went through that whole thing to trap that cereal, and literally the only thing it told me to do was not leave? Well, damn, I probably
Weird.
shouldn't have left. So that's where we leave Feyre in the first half of this book. And, you know, I want to say that she starts to really use the noggin from here. She doesn't. She doesn't at all. It gets worse. I mean, it has to get a little worse before it gets better, probably.
I just can't with her stupidity.
But, I mean, she grows. She becomes better. She's just a silly little human girl at this point.
She's just doing her
She
best.
has some growing up to do. She's doing her damn best. Her best is not good enough, but she is doing her best. And so
Going through the reread, she is kind of stupid.
But like, imagine you're just like some girl with no GED who all of a sudden has the fate of the world on your shoulders and you don't even know that you do because no one can tell you. Poor girl. She was going through it. But you know, it gets better, and this is like what we're about to jump into in next week's episode is like the part where it starts to go balls to the wall. We're going to get to Amarantha, and it then ensues the last 100 pages of an SJM book, which are always
Psychotic.
insane. And some of my favorite things about the Archeron sisters happen next. So stay tuned. But what are your overall thoughts from your reread of the first half of this book? I already know them, but just tell the people.
I feel dumb for being bamboozled by Tamlin. I liked Feyre less the second time. I think the first time I liked her, she was fine. She was never my favorite SJM character, like female lead, but I liked her even less. I was like, Feyre, the fuck are you doing? Like all the time. And it just keeps getting more dumb as we go farther. But I feel like there's a lot of loose ends in ACOTAR that we don't get still. And it was nice to have that refresher of all those little things. And then I'm excited to keep doing my reread of all of them. Maybe I can start putting them together. Maybe,
Yeah.
So, but it was definitely fun to go back down that journey.
Oh yeah, we've got at least 3 more ACOTAR books, if not 7.
Yeah.
So I do think that, I do believe that a lot like Throne of Glass, 90% of our questions are going to be answered. And in Throne of Glass, all the unanswered questions only are ones that leave a door open for Twilight of the Gods. So I think that, and Crescent City. So I think that the other series answer a lot of our questions if you look close enough. But every time I reread this series, which I do every year, at least once, I'm amazed by how Feyre survives as long as she does, because she's not smart, but also just physically, humans, I mean, as we know by the end of Akamath and Akawar, humans do not fare well that side of the wall, and she makes it a really fucking long time.
Yeah.
So, without managing to be killed by a fae or a lesser fae or some kind of monster or the elements or something.
Yeah.
It is pretty amazing that she's able to survive as long as she does. So, yeah. ACOTAR Part 1. Part 2 coming out next week. And then we'll dive into the holiest of holy texts, ACOMAF.
That's gonna be
Let's go.
That's gonna be intense.
Yeah, that one's gonna be like a 3-parter probably. But, yeah. I guess that's it. Thanks for listening to this episode of Wine and Wingspan. And we'll see you in the next deep dive.
Woo!
Woo!
Bum, bum, bum.
We gotta peace out and see if you're if you get confetti or balloons. I guess we got our preemptive balloons earlier in the episode. All right, bye.
Register my hand. I have a question. It's not happening.
Bye, guys.
Well, hi, lords and ladies. That is it for this episode of Wine and Wingspan. Make sure you're following us on TikTok, Instagram, and everywhere you listen to podcasts at Wine and Wingspan Pod.
Have a book you'd like us to talk about or a hot take you want us to break down? Send us all your opinions to wineandwingspanpod@gmail.com. May your glass be full and your wingspans be long.